Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Love Is Podcast. I'm excited to welcome the host of the Love Is Podcast, Kim Sorrelle. Kim, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest.
I'm doing great, Neil. Thank you. And yes, I'm very excited about my new friend, Joshua Broome. We got to spend some time together. Joshua is an amazing story, a man who has been through some things and just is now just bringing hope and love and joy and peace to the world. He is gone from porn star to preacher and has quite a story to tell. Joshua, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to see you again.
Yeah, so good to see you again. And thank you so much for having me. Just an absolute joy to share my story and to be here with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've written this book, The Seven Lies That Will Ruin Your Life.
There you go.
And you know some lies, obviously, with what you've been through in your life, and what you've come out of and whatever. So you're very well versed, and the book is fantastic. And I noticed that the chapters are all about false and faux and imitation and hijacked. They're all things that are, things that are just not truths, but in a very strong way. So I want to hear about that. Like, how did you come up with these seven, and why are they so tough sounding?
Yeah. So it was kind of built around two things. The primary vehicle for deciding to communicate my story in this way, because for the people that know my story, the book does have aspects of my story woven in throughout it, and it does talk about the adult film industry and the struggle that people might have with that. But the book is not solely that. It's really here are lies that I believe personally that are popular in culture, that culture and the world tries to propagate as truth. But if you know what is true, you can refute what is not. And there was an interaction that I had that changed my life with a bank teller, where I was at the most lonely, darkest moment in my life, and she simply said my name. And the use of my name, it allowed me to remember what was true and identify what was not, because the way that I felt about myself, everything that this lie had caused me to believe had nothing to do with who I truly was. And the beauty of a bank teller calling me out of my darkest moment was, a bank teller, they don't identify currency that's fraudulent by examining every fraudulent form of currency that exists. She becomes very, very familiar with what is real, the feel, the look, the touch, different nuances. And if you know what is true, that allows you to know what is not. And if you know what is truth, you can refute the lies that honestly, culture is propagating at a pretty alarming rate. So that's my hope in the book. It's really a recipe for healing. And there's a person that can heal, and there's a way to heal that both point to the person of Jesus. And that's what I've experienced, and that's what I hope others experience.
Now, thinking about the story of you going from one to the other, there was rock bottom moments that led you to this transformation, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, so the moment that I'm talking about, so it was from the outside looking in, I had been in the porn industry for years. I had made well over $1 million. I've done over 1,000 scenes. I had won Performer of the Year just months before this moment, and all the success that I thought would mitigate the wound that I had in my heart, that I felt like if I had enough, I would feel like I was enough. But when it didn't work, it amplified the anxiety, it deepened the depression, and I made a plan to take my life. And so that moment, I think in a real way, I experienced everything that the world said would bring you happiness. And when it didn't work, I had to look elsewhere. So it was either die or run. And thankfully, I ran. And while I was running 2 years later, there was a lot of brokenness that happened as I was trying to, the way that I describe it is I tried to put enough good dirt on my bad dirt so I didn't feel dirty, right? So I tried to do enough good things so I didn't feel bad about the bad things. And I was really trying to manage my perception. I was so worried about how people saw me. I was less worried about the real carnage that was happening inside of my heart and my soul. So yeah, so a lot happened on the way. Literally 2 years between the time I left the industry until I gave my life to Jesus. And, so I've been out of the industry for 11 years, and I experienced the gospel and gave my life to Jesus 9 years.
Mhm.
So I'm curious about this. So you had these 2 years and you had one identity for 6 years in the adult film industry. This was your identity. And then you hear your name, of course, with the bank teller, but then you have these 2 years of what was that identity? Because until the end of those 2 years, when you realized who Jesus was and you got your identity there, what was your identity in those 2 years?
Man, I don't get asked that question a lot, but it is by far my favorite question to answer because it points to different seasons of my life. Because before I was a famous porn star, I was my mother's son. So my identity was I am my mother's son. That's the thing that I'm most proud of. If you ask me anything like what is my favorite thing to do, spend time with my mom, because she was my hero. And then I started doing porn and had a lot of success. And then that is who I was. And there was probably a season that I would probably have referred like I'm an actor, I'm a model. But then on the other side of that, what did I try to become? It's like I tried to become a coach, a trainer, because I believed that I believed that my identity needed to be grafted in something other than myself, which is true, but I believed I needed something to cling on to that gave me credibility because I didn't think I was worth anything. So if I could attach myself to something else, then that would point to number one, away from me, and two, something that was good because I didn't believe anything about me was good or anything about me was worthwhile. So, um, as I was in that industry, I took off one mask and put on another. I like to call it this first date mask. I don't know who I am, and I don't really believe that I'm worth much. So I'm going to become the person that I think society wants me to be. So I'm going to manage my perception so that I become the person that receives affirmation and receives good job, or you're awesome, or you're helping people, or whatever, because I don't believe I can truly contribute. And the only way that I can, find validation is to do things that point people away from me because I don't think I'm worth anything. So the person I became was the helps people do things that they wanted to accomplish or obtain, metrics of success that they wanted to obtain. And by helping them, I vicariously got to experience some type of success and gave me some kind of validation. But I think all of that points to a deep void in my life that felt like, well, there's something wrong with me, which certainly points to, like, I grew up in a small town. My mom had me at an early age, and I didn't have a father in my home or in my life. And that father that wasn't in my home or my life was in close proximity. So I saw the thing I didn't have. I saw him be the thing to other people that he wasn't being to me. He had another son, another daughter, another marriage. So I saw the thing that I wanted and needed. And it started out being something that was making me curious, then made me frustrated, and made me resentful in a way. And then those things drove me to want to become something so that I could prove something, but never really about me.
Right. Makes complete sense. Kim, I'm going to throw it back to you because it's only a 15-minute interview. Yeah, I know you go to a love question, but I think I have one more question before a love question for the podcast because people could see the full long form video of on your television show as well, Kim, and you could bring that out for, because we're simulcasting on the Neil Haley show where people can check that interview out, because I'm sure it's going to get really deep that we don't have in 15 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I had a great interview with Joshua. Hopefully he thinks it was great too.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
But yeah, it was fabulous and it's gonna air soon. So people can look at that. So Joshua, one thing that we didn't talk about on the show though is I lived this year, I dedicated a whole year to trying to figure out the true meaning of love.
Yeah.
And I took 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, etc.
Yeah.
I used one word or phrase a month and focused on that. And the things that I found out about love just blew my mind, changed my life, rocked my world. And so love to me is everything, which I'm sure you would say it is to you as well. You know, God is love and love
Okay.
is everywhere, all the time,
Yeah.
everything. But I'm curious, you went from this in the porn industry, they kind of try to pretend there's love, I guess. I mean, I'm not that overly familiar, I'm proud to say, I guess. But you know, pretend that there's a relationship there, that there's a love, that there's some sort of a connection. And then out of that, in the world that you're in now, where you recognize your identity, you know where it comes from, you know who you are, and with your wife, with your kids, how has love shifted, and what is love to you?
Yeah. So I'll answer quickly, but so it points to, for me, like God is love, and you experience love correctly through intimacy with him, because I would say intimacy is found in proximity to God. And you see an example of this counterfeit in Exodus 32. Moses is up on the mountain, and Aaron and his misfits are creating this golden calf out of jewelry they melted down, and they created this golden animal, and they called the golden calf Elohim. They called him Yahweh. They were worshiping this thing they were calling God, but it wasn't God at all, because they had created this in their image. And I think so many people experience love that's created in our image, with our preference and our presuppositions, and we presuppose our thoughts on this God, and we call it God, and what we're worshiping is not God at all. And when I understood who God actually is through understanding who Jesus really is, that changed everything. And to your point, the last thing is the most difficult part in that verse, self-control, because that leads to self-denial. And I have to deny myself, because the things that I want aren't necessarily good for me, but I can trust that there's a God that is good, that loves me, and love is indicative of sacrifice. So he sacrificed himself for me. So a reasonable response for me is to sacrifice my wants and my desires if they don't line up with what he says is best, not because he's mean, because he loves me and I can trust him. So his ways are better than my wants. So that is the way that I really saw, okay, there's a drastic difference between love and lust, because lust is selfish and it serves me, and love is indicative of sacrifice, is which Jesus did on my behalf, so that I can experience the fulfillment that's only available in him.
Okay. Now, so Joshua, where can people pick up the book and stuff?
Yeah, so you can pick up the book, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, million, anywhere books are sold, but you know, Amazon helps the bestsellers list. So if you want to go to Amazon, I wouldn't mind if you did that. But yeah, and then on social media, I am Joshua Broome, is my social media across the board. If it doesn't have a blue check mark, it is not me. Don't fall for the counterfeits. And yeah.
All right. We appreciate it. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Love Is podcast, guys. Take care.